The moment the BBC apologised for calling Kate Middleton, the world had to do a double-take. A national broadcaster, a global news institution, publicly apologising over a name. Not for fake news, not for spreading lies, not for misrepresenting history, not for embarrassing the country, or misreporting a global event. A name. And that, right there, tells you everything about how the royal family wields power, how selective they are, and how absurdly they can dictate media behaviour when it suits them. Because suddenly, the world is supposed to bend, bow, and apologise over a name. Kate Middleton is literally the woman everyone has called Kate Middleton for years, yet the palace suddenly decided that calling her by her maiden name is a grave offence. The BBC, apparently more afraid of the palace than of journalistic integrity, bowed to that pressure, issued an apology, and reinforced the narrative that Kate is untouchable. That's what happens when the monarchy decides to flex. The media bends, curates, corrects and polishes, until every letter aligns with palace expectations. But where was that same vigilance when Meghan Sussex was being shredded, insulted and dehumanised on every tabloid page across the UK and beyond? The contrast is so sharp, it hurts to look at. If they could demand an apology from the BBC over a name, then make no mistake, they could have demanded corrections for racist undertones, false headlines, and downright malicious lies aimed at Meghan Sussex. If the palace had wanted, they could have called the BBC, called the tabloids, called every editor who allowed Meghan Sussex to be vilified. A single instruction, a single note, a single press release, and the narrative could have shifted in her favour instantly. But they didn't. Not because they couldn't. The BBC apology proves that they absolutely could. They didn't, because Meghan Sussex was not the person they wanted to protect. Kate, on the other hand, gets the full arsenal of palace influence, corrections, apologies, press leaks, and image management. Meghan Sussex got the opposite: attacks, scrutiny, misrepresentation, and silence. The hypocrisy here is staggering. A harmless name triggers an apology. Racist headlines, demeaning stories, false accusations against Meghan Sussex. Silence. The palace wants everyone to believe that the press runs itself, that they have no sway, that journalists operate independently of royal influence. And yet, when it comes to Kate Middleton, Catherine, Princess of Wales, the palace can move mountains. They can make a global broadcaster apologise for accidentally using the name the public already knows. That level of control is undeniable, visible, and frighteningly precise. And if that level of control exists for Kate, imagine what could have happened if Meghan Sussex was afforded the same protection. Imagine a press landscape where the narrative about her was corrected in real time, where lies were addressed immediately, where racist insinuations were called out and retracted. That could have happened. They chose not to make it happen. And let's be honest, the contrast is almost comical, if it weren't so tragic. Kate's name being spoken incorrectly, emergency, outrage, apology demanded. Meghan Sussex being labelled aggressive, difficult, exotic, even compared to animals in headlines. Nothing. Meghan Sussex accused of making Kate cry, despite the palace knowing full well the opposite was true. Nothing. Meghan Sussex being told she was too American, too outspoken, too modern, too independent. Silence. The disparity exposes an institutional preference so glaring that it's impossible to ignore. The palace operates as if it has no power over the press, yet the BBC apology proves that its influence is absolute, instantaneous, and ruthless when it wants to be. That power wasn't applied to protect Meghan Sussex because she didn't fit the mould, because she didn't obey the invisible script, because she dared to exist outside the boundaries of what the royal family deemed acceptable. It's almost laughable in a dark, infuriating way that the BBC can apologise over a name, but did not issue a single correction over the litany of misleading and harmful stories about Meghan Sussex. It's proof of intentional choice. The royal family can protect whom they want, and Meghan Sussex was clearly not worth the protection. Kate, on the other hand, gets polishing, safeguarding, and constant media grooming. Every headline about her is curated, every mistake corrected, every story monitored, and the apology over a name. That's just one example of how aggressively and obsessively the palace enforces that protection. Meanwhile, Meghan Sussex was left exposed to the full force of public scrutiny, tabloid exaggeration, and in some cases, outright hate. That disparity is not accidental. That disparity is intentional. That disparity is hypocrisy in its purest form. The BBC apology also exposes the absurdity of royal protocol. Suddenly, the world is supposed to treat Kate's title as a sacred relic, a violation of which requires a formal apology. Meanwhile, Meghan Sussex's humanity, dignity, and reputation were disregarded entirely. She wasn't a sacred relic. She was a target. She wasn't protected by protocol. She was destroyed by it. Every slight, every misrepresentation, every insinuation against Meghan Sussex went unchallenged because the palace simply didn't care to enforce the rules on her behalf. But when Kate's maiden name is uttered, alarms sound, press offices buzz, editors tremble, and apologies are issued. It's a double standard, so glaring, it's almost hard to believe anyone pretends it doesn't exist. And this is where the media becomes complicit. Journalists, editors, broadcasters, all of them know exactly what is at stake. They know who can cut off access, who can dictate coverage, who can make them apologize publicly for something as trivial as a name. That's power. That's influence. That's media control in its most refined form. And when Meghan Sussex was being attacked, the press knew that the palace wouldn't enforce corrections or issue apologies, so they ran wild. But when Kate's title is in question, the press falls in line. That tells you everything you need to know about priorities, protection, and hypocrisy. It's impossible to overstate the absurdity of this situation. The palace has shown, clearly and publicly, that it can command the media at will. The BBC, a global broadcaster, issued an apology over a name. This is not speculation. This is a matter of public record. And yet Meghan Sussex endured relentless misrepresentation for years, and the palace didn't move a finger to protect her. The difference is obvious, deliberate, and shocking. It's also a reminder that the royal family's public statements about fairness, duty, and impartiality are performative. The apology over a name exposes a system that protects the preferred and punishes the inconvenient. Meghan Sussex was inconvenient. Kate was preferred. And let's not ignore the optics. The palace expects us to see Meghan Sussex as the problem, the outsider, the aggressive one, the one who doesn't fit in. They expect us to admire Kate, protect Kate, worship Kate, and correct the media for even the slightest misstep regarding Kate. That's what the BBC apology demonstrates. It's not about accuracy, fairness, or respect. It's about controlling the narrative, enforcing loyalty, and signalling power. The palace can, at any moment, shape media behaviour. The only reason they didn't protect Meghan Sussex is because she wasn't deemed worthy of that protection. That's not powerlessness, that's hypocrisy, plain and simple. So next time someone tries to claim the palace has no influence over the press, show them the BBC apology. Show them how quickly a global broadcaster folded over a single name. Show them how the rules exist only for the chosen few. Show them how Meghan Sussex was left out in the cold, while Kate Middleton was polished, protected, and defended. The lesson is clear. The royal family can control the media whenever it wants. The lesson is also clear. Meghan Sussex was never on the list of those worth protecting. And the lesson that stings the most: that level of control, precision, and influence could have been applied to her, but it wasn't, because the system, the hierarchy, and the hypocrisy decided it wasn't necessary. In the end, the BBC apology is more than a correction about a name. It's a window into an institution that selectively chooses whom to protect, whom to destroy, and whom to elevate. It's a stark reminder that the press can bend, apologise, and correct itself for Kate Middleton, but remain silent for Meghan Sussex. That's power. That's hypocrisy. And that's the uncomfortable truth about the royal family, the media, and the narrative they control. The palace could have protected Meghan Sussex if they wanted to. They didn't. Instead, they proved that protocol, power, and protection are applied unevenly, selectively, and hypocritically. And the BBC apology? That's just the tip of the iceberg, a small glaring example of a much larger system designed to protect some while leaving others to suffer.